bespoke radio for the masses.
Headline edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army.
If the game is rigged, change the game. Game changer.
I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
This is Fade to Black with your host, Jimmy Church, on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, the Global Radio Alliance.
I need your help to get to the year 1985.
You're listening to Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Network.
Good evening. Fade to Black. Bespoke radio for the masses. Yeah, today's Monday, March 9th, 2020. "69 days into the new year, only 297 days left. We are live from a bunker. A bunker that is in the middle of beautiful downtown Burbank, California. And I would like to welcome everybody listening all around the world, all across the United States. Hither and thither, to and fro, back and forth, up and down, east and west, north and south, far and near. This is Fade to Black for KJCR, the Game Changer Network, and KGRA, the Planets. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. What is cracking, everybody? How you doing? How you doing? I'm doing pretty good. Just got back from Vegas. Full weekend in Vegas. More on that in just a bit. Tonight and every night from now on, we are broadcasting live on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, in addition to KGRA, TalkStream Live, Spreaker, TuneIn, and iHeartRadio. Man, that's pretty dang cool. And on the first of the month, April 1st, April Fool's Day, right in there, whatever that first Monday is in April, we're kicking in another broadcasting affiliate, another syndicator. And that does television, but they're going to be doing this it'll be the Fade to Black logo, but you'll be able to listen there too as well, their audience. And we've been doing tests on Mondays, and everything is solid. So there you go. All right, more on that. We'll announce that when we're ready to pull the trigger, but that'll be first Monday of April. That'll be kicking off tonight on the show. Back for more. Chris Bledsoe is here. He is back to continue our conversation from last week, and it was a heck of a show. Great conversation, great guy. And on January 8, 2007, Chris came face-to-face with extraterrestrial beings and missing time, although he wouldn't recall the details of that first terrifying encounter until hypnosis a full year and a half later. While on the banks of the Cape Fear River, Chris, his son Chris Jr., and 3 of his subcontractors discovered that they were about to experience the most harrowing day of their lives involving unexplained phenomena, leading them to believe that this was the end of the world. Now, MUFON sent their highest trained team to investigate the encounter, only to attempt to debunk and ridicule the Bledsoe family. Their experience was featured on Discovery Channel's 2008 series UFOs Over Earth, the Fayetteville Incident. Now, Multiple three-letter agencies have been involved with the Bledsoe case, bringing increased attention and mystery to this ever-evolving story. You can follow Chris over on his Facebook page, and it's CL Bledsoe. And we've got the links to Chris's Facebook page right there at jimmychurchradio.com. I would like to welcome back to Fade to Black, Chris Bledsoe Sr. Got to make sure we get the senior in there, Chris.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like the giggle. Does anybody call you senior?
Well, they're starting to catch on. Chris Jr. now is 30 years old, and we spend a lot of time together, so I get that quite a bit.
Wow, he's 30.
Yeah.
I guess that makes sense. When you look at, he's just a kid in the Burning Tree video.
That's right.
Yeah. Wow. Where does the time go? When you're a parent, we'll jump into our conversation in a second, but isn't it amazing when you become a parent? I'm a parent. Rita's a parent. When you become a parent, the years just disappear. They're like they never happened. What's the secret, man? How do we stop mother time?
I don't think we will. It's just spend every minute you have with your children. That's the most important thing one can do, I believe.
Yeah. Do you have any grandkids?
Got one on the way. Chris Jr.'s that's our first, and he's expecting.
His wife is
in May.
His wife is expecting.
Right. He and Jessica are expecting in May.
Right on. That's the cycle of life right there.
That's right.
That's the cycle of life. That's amazing. That's absolutely amazing. Well, Chris, as expected, the show last week caused a lot of conversation. And I expected all of that, and nothing but positive flow and energy came off of last week's conversation. And we knew, we knew that we would run out of time last week, and I appreciate you taking the time to come back this week and finish up. And one of the things, I want to do a little bit of a recap, which I just did right now. I want to do a little bit of a recap, not much, because there's one thing. Actually, let's kind of start here. Let's go straight into it. With everything that happened after the 2007 incident, as time went by, did you start to forget about what happened at the Cape Fear River because of all of the other things that were happening? Did it seem like Cape Fear and what happened with your son and your three employees, that it was a distant memory?
Well, not really. I mean, it caused so much trouble and everything else with it. I could never forget it. I mean, I relive it. And I tell you, Jimmy, it's I would say the first 5 or 6 years after that, I couldn't tell it without getting emotional. It was just impossible because I had to relive, finding my son in the position he was just panicked. He was in shock, and anyone would be to have a face-to-face encounter like that. And so, no, I can never forget it. I remember every detail, just like I see it clearly. And we try to forget about it. I've tried many times, but it just don't go away.
The events last week, we touched upon the lady, and we're going to go much, much deeper into that subject tonight. And the other things that followed over the years. I just want to ask a very direct question at this point. The events at the river seem to me, from the way that you've described it, a pure alien UFO encounter, close encounter of the third, fourth, or fifth kind. That's what that seems to me. What happened later seems to almost be something different. But they must be connected. Are they connected?
It's all connected. And I've said this for, 13 years. And it went on deaf ears for a long time. Nobody wanted to hear of a spiritual encounter because that's what it was. I mean, I was, at that time in my life, I was praying for the Lord to help me or take me, whoever that was or is up there. And I was walking along, looking up and saying, I need help. And I was very sincere. And here are these, I called them orbs, right? But they're 40-foot round balls of fire came out of the sky. And then it all went from there. After we got home, people started showing up in the house. My wife and children were seeing them, as many as 2 at the time. And stuff moving in the house, objects flinging off the shelves, toothbrushes missing one day and another one the next. And I mean, just all kinds of stuff and lights in the sky. So I don't know, Jimmy, I wish we could all get past this if it's real and get our minds together. All these smart scientists, they're brilliant scientists that are afraid to even study this because of ridicule. And until we get past that, I think we're going to be asking these questions forever. It's so deep, I can't begin to tell you. It never ceases to amaze me.
Now,
but it's all connected.
And you live in, we talked about this last week. I don't want to beleaguer this, but you live in a very religious part of the country. And most of the people that live in that area of the country feel that they understand the Bible. They go to church, they read the Bible, they've got their own take on it, and they feel that they fully get it. I have done the same thing, and I am from the Midwest. The one thing that I have now started to move towards is that if I read the Bible and I just insert aliens or ET throughout the Bible, it starts to make sense, right? It just makes sense to me. And is that where you are at now, that the thoughts of Moses or these components of the Bible, where they were interacting with what you're interacting with now, but they made a religious component to it throughout history because they didn't understand that they may be communicating with a supernatural or paranormal or ET that is here from off planet, and that's what angels are, and that's what is that a possibility from your view?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, well, let me kind of tell you why I say the word angel, and I don't say alien because alien has been perverted so bad. It reminds me of Sigourney Weaver and this crab-looking, spider-like monster that spits acid out of his face. That, to me, becomes alien. But I use the word angel for a reason, and that reason is the way it reacts. It doesn't react like some Pleiadian or some being from another planet. It's always around us, Jimmy. It's listening all the time. I can walk outside just about, and I don't want to boast, but it happens a lot, either with my family or with others. Go out and I just ask them, I need to see you, and boom, they appear. They come right then, a lot of times immediately. A lot of times I walk out and they're waiting for me to come out the door. So how do you explain this thing when you ask for help and they come? That was with the Crohn's. And now I just know by communication with them that they act more like they're always there and for a different reason. I can't explain it. But Diana Pasulkin, I studied for years about this, and she has a lot of things she shared with me that totally links it with the Bible, like, Ezekiel's will or the word cloud. If you use the word cloud in the Bible, if you put it in a program like Bible Gateway, it'll come up close to 100 times. And it is usually always talking about Jesus coming with the clouds of heaven, coming back with the clouds, or returning in the clouds, or on the clouds, or with the clouds. And then we found out that King James intentionally, this was a little birdie told me this, mistranslated that word so it would look like a weather phenomenon rather than an object in the sky. So you see, it's quite a mystery. The reason I use angel is because of the way it reacts. It listens and it helps people. And I've heard it can hurt people as well. So I don't know.
Yeah, and I have found, this is my own personal experience, but I have found that, and CE5 protocols and people going out and meditating and conscious connections to something appearing. And my own, excuse me, something in my throat. I'll give you a perfect example. Myself and a group of friends, this is 7 years ago, were out in Joshua Tree in the middle of the desert, Chris. I'm going to make this very brief. I just want you to hear what happened to us. And somebody says, right on the patio, out in the middle of the desert, 10, 11 o'clock at night, somebody says, hey, wouldn't it be cool if we saw a UFO? Chris, at that moment, this white ball of light shoots up from the middle of the desert floor straight up into the stars. And it lasted about 2 seconds. Pew!
Yeah.
Just shot.
Listening.
At that exact moment, we all saw it. We were all in shock. We're all standing there like, that was on cue.
Exactly.
Does it have to be any more clear than that when we're talking about some type of communication that is going on, right?
Yeah, well, 13 years of that happening all the time. I mean, like all the time. Pretty much anytime I want to, if I'm alone or with my kids, it's not afraid to come. And it comes with others like John Alexander and Dr. McGuire and Chase Klusky and different ones that have come here with me. A lot of people. But how do you get alien out of something that's interacting with you, listening to you, guiding you? And I have other reasons for saying that. I don't really know. I can't honestly say what we're dealing with, but I can honestly say how it interacts with me. And that's what lends me the belief that it's not the typical nuts and bolts alien. It's more like something that's here watching us, maybe created us, is benevolent, cares about us. That's just general thought.
Well, after 2008, let's get past the MUFON side of this. Oh, I spoke to Jan Harzan today, and Jan, we talked about you briefly, and he said that I'm going to tell you two things that he said. He said one, he said that MUFON fully supports you and your case, and that it's one of the most interesting and intriguing cases he has ever heard of. And then he said, I asked him, I said, well, would you guys be interested in reopening the case? And he said, absolutely. So I'm just throwing that's MUFON's take today. And I think that they are fully, and hearing from Janet with such a positive response. I know that she had a bad experience, but that was his comments today about you. So let's move past the MUFON period here. We'll move past the lie detector, the TV show. But as you started to get settled back in, trying to get your life back together, which is a very difficult period for you. And I think that you have mentioned that you started to go into a little bit of seclusion, that you weren't communicating and you were hanging out at the house constantly. When you went through this period, who came and visited you first, interested in the case, to come and speak to you about it? Who came to the house?
It would have been probably the first guy that came. Now, this is after MUFON, June of 2008. They were there pretty much the first 6 months of 2008. The first year, nobody, because I didn't report it until October. And as soon as MUFON left around June or July, Ryan, my youngest boy, calls me and says, "Dad, there's someone from NASA here. He'd like to meet you." And I said, "Well, it's going to be an hour before I can get home. So if he wants to meet me bad enough, he'll stick around." Well, that's what I told him. And sure enough, when I got home, here's this 6'6" tall scientist from Florida had drove up blindly, just knocking on my door, and that turned into a wonderful relationship with my wife and children, and Hal Povenmire's wife, Katie, which she's probably listening tonight, and he passed away this past October.
How do you say
this past Thanksgiving.
How do you say his last name? How do you spell it?
It's Poven, Povenmire, Hal Povenmire, and he was right at 60 years at NASA, and he had all his clearances when he passed away. And he was an astronomer for 50-plus years. He won all kinds of astronomy awards. They have asteroids named after him, and he discovered the Upsilon Pegasus meteor shower, and he mapped the moon. This guy actually mapped the moon. He was working at NASA before NASA was called NASA. He was with Werner von Braun in the 56, 57, 58 through that time range. And he worked on the space shuttle. But we learned a lot, and he kind of nurtured this family, and he asked me many times, and I probably shouldn't say, but he told us, I would say around 2013 or 14, he said, NASA's going to be, or the government's going to be letting loose a little bit of secrets in the next few years, and we were just wondering if your family would like to be a face to this disclosure thing for us. And of course we were honored, and he never changed that position the whole time up until he died. But we studied a lot, and there were a lot of other people that came, but Hal was the first one.
Yeah, very interesting background. For somebody like that, an astronomer, he's a NASA engineer, but now he's at your house, and he's at your house for UFOs. He's not at your house to, drop off candy or a pizza. He's there because of the UFO side of things. Had he had sightings or contact or some other information, you became very close with Hal. What was it that he disclosed to you about his interest of contacting you?
Well, first thing, in fact, I had the honor of meeting Paul Hynek a couple of weeks ago in San Francisco, and I told Paul that Dr. Povenmire actually graduated from Ohio State with J. Allen Hynek. He was his astronomy professor. And so he worked for Blue Book the whole time pretty much, and he was the debunker. That was his thing. I mean, everything was always, nothing was real. That was the approach he took. He could find a hole in anything from, that's what he did. But when he came to visit us, and he started hearing from these little children and the whole family, I think he realized it was all real, and right on, really early on. And even when my mother and dad were doubting me, Hal went next door and told them, you need to support your son because what he's telling you is 100% real.
Yeah, he wrote a book called UFOs and Alien Abduction Phenomena, a scientific analysis.
Yes.
And so his interest was genuine and real. Who next, after Hal, who next visited you at the home?
Oh, Lord, that would be... there's some I can't say. These scientists from some scientists from the aerospace industry came. Diana Pasolkas Tyler, her friend, she mentions came, and in fact, I knew him several years before she would even meet him. She was just always so not wanting to meet anybody like that. But long story short, he was one. But I really can't use names there. But it was scientists. And that's one of the reasons I went dark, is that it was more interesting to me to study with all these people and learn some secrets and just learn together with all these professionals than to be out in the UFO world trying to write books and be popular. And that was something they encouraged me not to do, but to...
Now, each one of these, we're going to head towards a break real quick, but when Hal shows up, Diana is now in your life, Tyler, some scientists that we can't name now. Maybe I'll squeeze names out of you during the show tonight. I'm really good at that, Chris. And Jim Semivan, right?
Yeah.
Right?
Jim's been a friend a long time.
And John Alexander. Did all of these people that showed up at your house, did all of them have their own supernatural or paranormal experience?
Well, Jim actually did. He sure did.
John Alexander?
John really didn't have anything that he ever talked about. For 50 years, that man has gone around the world. He's like the leading paranormal investigator with the military, I can assure you. He's traveled about like 80 or 90 countries he's been to. And he spoke of one time he saw lights just fly over up high that he ruled out being a satellite. But with me, what he saw was a lot closer, and it appeared. It appeared within seconds after I told him it would.
And Hal Pavemeyer, did he have any experiences with you?
He had an orb fly over with me in the backyard, very low, and kind of. He was just gotten over his gallbladder surgery, and it was real cold. And he and I were out in the backyard with blankets around us, side by side, just having a good time. And something appeared down fairly low and flew across the sky.
And tomorrow night, artificial intelligence scientist Bob McGuire is going to be here to talk about AI, but he's also visited your home. Did he have any experiences?
Yeah, and you should ask him about that.
Okay.
In fact, it was my son Ryan recorded one of the sightings we had, but it was an amazing experience that I walked out with him and looked up at the sky and asked a direct question: if it be your will for me to work with Mr. McGuire, because he came with a proposal about working on his new company that he'll talk about for imaging or tracking network.
All right. Well, listen, I need to take a break right here. That's a pretty long, solid list of researchers, Chris. Pretty extensive. We'll pick up where we're leaving off right now when we come back after this short break. Tonight, Chris Bledsoe. This is Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Our guest tonight, Chris Bledsoe. And I want to remind everybody, we have a huge week here on Fade to Black. Tomorrow night, Bob McGuire is here. Wednesday night, Dr. Diana Pasolka is going to join us. Thursday night is going to be another Fader night with open lines all night long. Now, Chris, I want to kind of move into this next phase of your life. And I want to touch upon, I don't want to call them entities. I don't have another word, but you start to encounter, you did see stuff back in 2007. But moving forward here, these images of these beings appear to be, and I want you to describe them the best that you can, but they seem to be with and without form, if that's the best way that I can describe it. There's a shape there, but not necessarily details. Am I describing this correctly?
Well, it's all according to how, in other words, I've witnessed these things from coming from an orb. I actually have a video of an orb, and as it appears, you see this 6-foot entity in a flash come out of the orb, and the orb stays there, and the entity's built for a flash for a second, but then it's like translucent. So it comes into our world, and then it's translucent. They're walking around us all the time. You just can't see them. But they can actually turn, I would say something like a rheostat is how we could imagine it. They can turn that thing up, and they can become more visible into our world. So it's according where you see them. If they're tuned in, they can come fully physical into our world, or they can be smoky looking. Like I have pictures of them to where they look kind of like smoke. That's a good way to say it.
Yeah, right. And I'm picturing it. By the way, it's a little bit scary when we think of it this way, but it should be. I don't know if we should ever be fully comfortable with something like this. But if you're looking at something with a smoky shape in front of you, are you seeing things like arms and legs and a head? Is there that general shape when they're in this smoky existence?
Yes, can be. Or they can be just pure elemental looking. Of course, that could be totally something different, but usually if you see orbs flashing, and I don't know how many people see these things in the visual spectrum, but John Alexander talks about it, that these orbs appear and they come completely into the visual spectrum. It's like Dr. McGuire said when he came here, I just asked them to appear, and they started appearing, and we didn't need night vision or any of that. I mean, I take pictures with my camera phone. That's how I usually get them. So they got to be in the visible spectrum and really close up. But yeah, I have caught a lot of stuff on camera, and let Bob tell you his experience if you can get it out of him.
Now these videos, and you've offered to send me the videos. I haven't taken you up on the offer yet, but I have the feeling after the show tonight, I want my inbox filled up with some Chris Bledsoe action. But are we ever going to see your video collection?
I would say probably so. Dr. McGuire is going to come here and help me sort through these things and process them. So when he puts his name on it, he pretty well can tell if it's real or not.
Right.
And there's one video that I'll send you tonight that I really haven't. I shared it at the conference in San Francisco, but I really haven't shared it publicly. We haven't released it, but I think nobody will be able to debunk it, period. And it was taken right over my head, 150 feet up, or maybe 200 feet away. It's fully in focus. It's not blurry. And it's an orb, and it appeared when I asked it to. I mean, immediately it appeared. I got a pretty good video of it, and I think I'll send you that tonight and see what you think.
Yeah, I would love to see it. Do you think that this is what people have been seeing as ghosts for the last few thousand years? I
think so. I think it's everything. I couldn't even begin to tell you what all we're dealing with. I think there are aliens, there are ghosts, and some of these orbs, Jimmy, have clear pictures of a dog. I've got a dog that got killed by a car, and I took a picture over her grave a couple of weeks after she passed away. And this visible orb of my black Labrador is in that ball of light. So you tell me, and children and people and animals. So there's something going around all around us that we can't see. And I mean, it's so deep, layers of stuff, probably dimensions upon dimensions, extra. Who knows?
Now, your family, okay, so your family is experiencing something, but they weren't telling you. And I want to speak about this for a second. Why didn't they know that things are going on? They know about the Cape Fear River incident. They know the MUFON, the people coming out, and they're seeing things around the house, but they're not sharing it with you. Why didn't they? Why didn't they talk to you about it?
Well, they didn't for the first 10 months or so, until I reported it, because that's when I really found out what they had been seeing. Because when MUFON's local investigator came, the first one, Steve McDaniel, my wife sat down very quietly, and she looked at him and she said, "What do you know about shadow people?"
Right.
And I started thinking, something's going on with you guys that I haven't heard about.
Yeah.
So
did you ask your wife, why haven't you been telling me about this? This is important.
Well, it's because we were like kind of, I was feeling pressure, Jimmy, not to ever share it publicly because, the church, my mom and dad, the whole world, my wife was definitely afraid about our children being scared, and they didn't know what it was we were dealing with, and we were left with no answers. This stuff was going on, so the fear factor was at 100% around the house. And, of course, I kept sharing it with them. My kids, every time my wife would come to the door, we're all standing there looking at it. It just blinks out before she gets there. And so I kept thinking, darn, they got to see it. I got to see it, but she didn't. And that went on for the longest time until and I was actually praying that they would all experience it so I wouldn't be by myself, But we were trying to keep it under wraps and keep our children as normal in school as possible without bringing fear, not knowing what we were dealing with, I had no clue what it was. Just these big balls of light came out of the sky. My health was better, but now weird stuff was going on, really weird stuff. These things were coming back, landing in my yard. I have pictures of burnt rings in the grass, hovering outside. My wife took the kids to Hope Mills to see their grandma, and on the way back, this big, tall, looked like an ice cream cone, she said, flew right in front of them, not high off the road. It was big, and just let them out of town. And they came home calling the airport, trying to find out if they had seen it on the radar. So the first year we were kind of at one another, but after that, when everybody left us, that's when the family gelled together and realized that this stuff is real. We're all experiencing it, and who's here to help us? And we were scared to death, really. And then here comes my friend from NASA, Hal, and he just answered a lot of questions and soothed the family and kind of fell in love with my kids, especially Emily, which we so much appreciate him. He's gone now.
The lady. Let's talk about this. The lady. Can you? I've seen pictures, some illustrations, but can you describe her for the audience? What she looked like?
She looked perfectly human, except she was glowing very brightly. She was hovering off the ground about 3 feet. Her feet were 3 feet, or my chin. If I'm 6 foot tall or 5'11", so on my knees, I was on my knees, about to get up. When I raised up, there she was. So her feet were about my chin high. I'd say she was 5 feet tall, maybe a little under. Her dress was white and sparkling like stars in the sky. It was moving. Flowing. Her hair was blonde or golden. It's just brilliant golden color. Eyes rich blue, real blue. Her dress went all the way down. She was barefooted. Went all the way down to the tops of her feet and out to the wrist on her arms. And it was a neck dress. It wasn't open anywhere. And she just appeared. Out of nowhere, come from out of a hole came this huge bull, and I didn't know the significance. Let me tell you, all this, I don't know how anybody could imagine this in their wildest dreams, but that's what got the attention of people in the know. Dr. Pasulka, of course, she brings the Vatican behind her. She's got a lot of contacts, and my friends from these 3-letter agencies all got very deeply in tune with what this lady was about and what she had to say. I just promise you, it got a lot of attention and still does to this day. What she said, how she looked, that she's the same lady as a Fatima, Guadalupe.
Well, yeah, and let's actually stop right there. The similarities between Fatima and your experience are astonishing. It's very, very close to the same story, including the disclosure of things in the future. And I want to focus on that for a second. The things that she said, you said last week, she said, this is your gig. Right? This is your job. And this is your mission. And you are going to do this. And I am going to help you. Right? Right?
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
And I understand. I want to know, as with everybody else, when we get to a moment in an experience like this, where the actual disclosure of what was said is not there. And that happened with Fatima. The secret stayed with the Vatican, and it would be revealed at a later date. And that I think for most people is it's a disappointment. We need to know these things. What is it that she said to you, Chris?
Well, there are a couple things that I'm not willing to tell at this moment, but the biggest thing she told me that I can tell you, I was asked to put in writing for the Pentagon, and I did that. I handed it to the right person that could carry it there, and that was from their request, if that matters. But the biggest thing that I gave to them was she told me that there are people in power on this planet that are using, and this is why I said it was biblical. You know, I had this biblical thing put in there. She said there are people in power that are using the last book of the King James Bible, or the book of Revelations, as a script to bring about the end of the world. Now, they're doing it intentionally. These people in power, that's all she said. And that there was be a person that comes that would Well, I probably shouldn't say this,
No,
but
you
it was
should.
about Jerusalem becoming the capital of Israel, and that was when that happened. That was a marker for me to know that all of this is happening as we speak.
But what is it that the people in expand on that? What is it that people are doing?
They're using the last book of the Bible as a script to make things happen just as the Bible says, to bring about the prophecy. They want to fulfill the prophecy. Without it happening on its own, there are people trying to make it happen. And that was basically the words she gave to me.
And you wrote that out and delivered that to the Pentagon?
Well, I delivered it to somebody that took it there.
Right.
Yes.
What else did she say?
Well, I'm not at liberty to say that right now because it just wouldn't do any good.
Why not, Chris?
It's just not the right time, I don't think. And I would just rather not.
Would you share it with me privately?
Yeah, I probably would.
Okay. All right.
I don't like to get into doom and gloom stuff, right?
Right.
And her message was not the end of the world, but a new beginning. That that, and I'll give you a little bit of this, that the age of Aquarius was going to mark a time of peace to come on earth, that there would be troubles before then, and that the divine feminine would prevail, that the maternal the maternal power would take a hold and peace would come, that the women would rise up and that energy would take and bring about peace in time. So it's all a good thing. It's not nothing bad. It was all that we're going to rise up in peace. It's just a few things I was shown in between that I didn't like a whole lot. But none of that has to happen.
And do you think, I can't wait to hear this privately, but do you think that when you are dealing with the future and the foretelling of the future, then I don't think anybody knows the future. I think time travelers would know the future, right? Somebody that has been there and has come back and is speaking about events from the future. Is that a possibility here? Because that would make a lot more sense.
I would think it is a possibility. I know that they're worried about they're worried about humanity and this planet and keeping it, not abusing it, not destroying it, and that's been my whole thing. With all of this, it comes down to the nature and to this planet. That we've got to learn to get along. We have to learn to live on this planet without destroying each other and the planet.
Is there, when you were with her, was there an actual physical two-way communication?
Not by mouth. I mean, I didn't really ask a whole lot of questions. I just listened. I did, it was just too great. I was so stunned I didn't even know how to act at what I was seeing. But I knew what she was saying. I knew exactly because I didn't want to tell the story ever again. I was so upset from what had happened with my family and the kids, and the television thing made me look bad, and everybody just doubled down on laughter and the whole thing. So I was not ever going to talk about it again until she came. When she came, that changed everything. I went from never talking to, yes, I want to talk every day that I can. And 2 weeks later, I was with Dr. Pasulka, and I would have never met her hadn't this lady come and encouraged me to make that meeting. So it was an arranged thing, which in time it'll all come out, I think. because Dr. Pasolka and I are working on a project together and have been for many years. And if it goes, it'll be a really big deal.
The communication with you, did she, the lady, say that she was also communicating with other people here on Earth, right? Is this same message, or are you the only one? You know, and I don't want to put you in the, you know, some kind of Messiah situation where you're the chosen one.
Well, I don't see that.
Right.
Myself.
So is this same message being deployed with others around the world?
I would say so, yeah. I would think that a lot of people have had experiences with her because, you know, I'm fortunate to have met Dr. George Zervos, which Diana introduced me to, and he's the world's authority on the lady. And I have studied, you might say I have a honorary PhD in religion and science in that study. But, you know, here I'm a Baptist guy, Protestant from North Carolina, never studied about the mother or the lady or anything in Catholicism other than, you know, Jesus. And now here's the Southern Baptist guy meets this lady of Fatima, or the Catholics would call her the Virgin Mary. And so that's kind of where I stood with this. I didn't know a lady, but I do now. But I see her differently than the Catholics would see her. That's why it's easy for me to say the Lady of Fatima. Of course, we know some inside stuff, too, that there were really 100,000 witnesses to that Lady of Fatima.
And staying on this for just a bit, and I've got 2 minutes before the break. The Our Lady of Fatima, and that experience has been associated with the Virgin Mary. And that came from the kids that were there. Let me shift over to you, Chris. Do you think you were visited by the Virgin Mary? And apparently the Virgin Mary is a blonde, if that is the case, right?
Well, I don't think it was the Virgin Mary. I think it was something that... you know, I don't know the Virgin Mary. It could have been, but, you know, I think she's been around forever, not just for the last 2,000 years, but for the last nearly million years.
Sure.
There's data for that.
Yeah, fascinating. And now the obvious question before the break. The 3 children in Fatima in 1917, do you think that they witnessed and met who you witnessed?
I would say it was probably the same person, yes.
Very interesting. Let's take our break right here. This is Fade to Black. I am your host, Jimmy Church. Our guest tonight, Chris Bledsoe. We have got a lot more to discuss. You just stay right there. It's going to be a great conversation tonight. This is Fade to Black on the Game Changer Network and KGRA, The Planet. Stay with us. Welcome back. Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. If you ever miss a live show, tonight is now. It's live. But if you ever miss a live show, go to jimmychurchradio.com, click on that podcast banner. We have almost 1,200 shows right there in the archives. 1,200 shows for just $2 per month. Click on that podcast banner, and you will always have Fade to Black when you're driving to work in the morning. Chris, how often do you listen to Fade to Black? Do you like dial in and go, man, this show's crazy?
Actually, this is the first time I've listened, really. I have to say, honestly, Jimmy, I've made it a point and this I took as advice from some scientists early on.
Right.
To not listen to anybody's experiences or not go to these conferences and get all involved because they wanted me to figure it on my own and keep my experience. And so that's why I've been hidden so long and I've never listened to much of anything or I just don't.
Have you thought about, and I'm glad you responded that way, have you thought about reaching out to Travis Walton?
I know Travis very well.
And have you guys compared notes privately?
We have. In fact, about 4 or 5 years ago, Travis and I sat down and talked for a long time when he was talking about his experience. And, he came back out with some new stuff, and I was actually there with him during that time, doing a lot of talking.
He's amazing.
Yeah.
He's absolutely amazing. The thing is about Travis, like you, this is the similarity. How many times can you tell the Cape Fear story, right?
Right.
How many times can you do it? How many times can Travis Walton tell his story again? Because that's all anybody is, show host and people, that's, they just want him to relive that. When you sit privately with Travis and just have a conversation about things, you find out not only about how intelligent he is, but he's got a lot of things to say. And he's got a lot of not only experience, but he knows things. And if you just sit and talk with Travis like you did, you find out how deep he is, not only about the subject, but his concern for this planet and the way that these experiences are dealt with. He's an amazing source of material, isn't he?
I agree. I just think the world of Travis. He's like the hero to me, actually.
He is absolutely amazing. So I'm glad that you've opened up that dialogue. I want to move on, and I want to talk about your dad. Can we talk about your dad?
Sure.
Okay. You guys are, which I think is really cool. Well, were neighbors. Your mom still lives next door?
Well, we moved since then, but she still is in the same place.
She's in the same place. Okay. Your dad gets sick, right? It's his gallbladder.
Yeah, first his kidneys and then his gallbladder.
And he goes to Duke University. He goes into the hospital.
Yeah, this was his kidney. He went to Duke. Go ahead, I'll let you.
No, that's okay. He goes to Duke. He's got some serious medical issues that are going on. He goes to Duke. And while in the hospital, what do they tell the family? What do the doctors say?
Well, Dad had a major heart attack in 2004 where he lost like 40% of his heart. And he was a big guy, 380 pounds. And so he couldn't walk very far without being completely out of oxygen. So it handicapped him. And then along about 2009 or 10, I guess, or 11, I don't know the exact year, but it was in that frame. He goes to Duke, and they diagnosed him with cancer in his kidney. And they told us that they could not operate because if they put him on, tried to put him under, his blood pressure would drop too low because of half his heart wasn't working, and he would never come out of anesthesia. So they just told us he was going to die, and it would get worse before it got better. It would be very painful, agony. I mean, they told us all that, right? And so the whole family is suffering this. My dad, my best friend, lives next door. 52 years we've been best friends. He's going to die in agony of kidney cancer. And so I immediately shifted my attention to the sky and to the lady. And this was after the lady came. And I was praying to help him, to heal him, that this can't happen. It was just terrible. So this goes on for a month or so. We're looking at of him facing this. And so the doctors at Duke said, why don't you send him to Chapel Hill, UNC Chapel Hill, very famous school of medicine, and get a second opinion. He said they think that Chapel Hill has a new machine that they're able to put him in and turn him over and do it locally, operate on his kidney with some sort of machine that freezes it. It's all I know, without putting him to sleep. So dad and mother goes up there, and it was on a Friday evening. We come home early, my wife and all the kids got off the school bus and were home from school, and we were on the patio with Mom and Dad waiting on the results to come in from Chapel Hill. And all of us were just pleading, praying and everything. And it was just this very silent, long-faced moment for everybody. It was about 4 o'clock in the evening on a Friday evening. And Mom gets a call. The best I can remember, the way the doctor at Chapel Hill said, we don't see anything here. There's no cancer that we see that'll ever cause him to die. Nothing there. I mean, it was like a miracle had happened. And it did. And immediately, Jimmy, I just threw my hands straight up in the air. I'm sitting facing Dad, all of us on the patio. Mom, Yvonne, my wife, some of my children, Dad, Mother, and I just raised my hands straight up in a very quick motion, looking at Dad, and said, "Thank you, Lord." And when I looked up, between my hands, it appeared. And I said, "Oh, my God, look." Mom and Dad and my wife and everybody just stood there. Dad stood up from his swing. He was laying down in a swing, and he stood up and looked up, and there was this really long cigar-looking craft, glowing, very translucent white looking. And it just sat there, and then all of a sudden it moved away. It moved towards the southwest and vanished right in front of us. But it happened as soon as I said, "Thank you, Lord," threw my hands up, and it appeared all at the same time. So that's another reason, all these things that have gone on over 13 years, the way it acts, the way it interacts, the way it comes and listens, is something much more greater than just a simple alien from Pleiades, in my opinion. It's something more complex. Maybe we're ants in an ant farm.
Yeah, totally. Let's stop right there for a second. Let's analyze this. Are you suggesting that between Duke and Chapel Hill, when you went out and asked for guidance and contact, that your friends cured your father?
I absolutely believe that 100%.
Do you think that Duke did not make a mistake, that they found cancer in your father?
Duke don't make mistakes like that.
I would say that is true. But the question is, do you believe that Duke actually found cancer in your father?
Yes, 100%.
And Chapel Hill is not going to make mistakes either, are they?
No, sir.
And they did not find cancer. What was the time period between Duke and Chapel Hill?
30, 45 days, maybe. From Duke went on for a month of testing, and when we got the results back, there was a month there of us just tormented. All of my children, my sisters and her children, all young grandchildren were just was very sad. I mean, we were devastated. And Dad was living, thinking, it was the end of the world for him. And
well, that was the message from Duke. Duke was like, you guys need to prepare.
Yeah, absolutely. And Chapel Hill said, there's nothing there that'll take your father away.
Okay, now this is the question, and you may laugh as loud as you want, okay? Did your father feel the change, right? Did he go from, like, being sick to feeling pretty dang good?
Yeah, he never suffered from it. Not in his kidney anymore. His gallbladder broke after that, busted or ruptured. And that happened at the hospital, by the way. And eventually it weakened him so bad, he just really never recovered from that. He had heart failure. But that was very bad on him.
The appearance of the cigar-shaped craft. By the way, I've seen a lot of stuff, Chris. I still haven't seen a cigar-shaped craft. I hear these descriptions all the time and witnesses. I have no idea what that might look like. I haven't seen one yet, and I look forward to the day that I do. But you guys did. The whole family did that day after the news came in from Chapel Hill. And I understand, sort of understand your description. Was it real? Was it solid? As opposed to, a glowing orb of energy. That's another description, and I understand that too. But was this a craft?
Yes. It was a tubular, like a cylinder. I wouldn't say cigar like pointed on each end. I say that because a lot of people would think that, but it was like a cylinder, like a long. I don't know how big it was, but it was really big, and it just stood there stationary, glowing, but you could plainly see it was a cylinder-shaped object, probably 100 feet long, I would guess, if I had to guess the length of it, or more. And
these objects, and you're very lucky, they always seem to appear fairly close to you. 50 feet in the air, 100 feet in the air, a couple 100 feet in the air, but you can see detail. You can see it. It's right there. It's in front of you, and it's low. Same situation with this craft?
It wasn't so low, but we could see very good detail. It was very big, and it was not that close to us, but it was big enough and there that everybody saw it plain as day.
Was it flat on the ends?
Flat, yes. Like a tube. It's like a pipe. Just take a piece of pipe and hold it up, and that's what it looked like, a cylinder.
The craft hung up there for a little bit. How did it fly away?
It just went straight, like it was on a string. It sat there a second, and then it moved away kind of slowly, and it vanished, like vanishing. You've seen TV shows where things vanish in front of you, like, you get a little wobbly look and all of a sudden it's gone. Well, that's really how it looks, how it did. It just kind of vanished. But Dr. McGuire, by the way, had an experience here, and Ryan videoed it. And you can hear Bob talking in it, but it did the same thing. This object appeared to the west, right next to Venus, and was as bright as Venus or brighter. And it was just above the trees. It looked from our angle, and it flew kind of up to us, and then turned towards the north. And as it was departing, it just slowly vanished. Like the video, I'll send you a video later, and you'll see how they do.
The cigar-shaped pipe craft, and I like that description. Was that the only time that you have seen this particular craft?
No, I've seen it before. In fact, my niece, I was in Ohio on a scientific journey, you might say, with a friend. And I can't say who, but my mother calls and my niece calls me when I was with this guy from the aerospace industry, right? So he looks at me because I put it on audio where, speakerphone, and his eyes he looked at me like, oh my God. But Mom calls, and Stephanie, and said that there was a cylinder hovering over my house. It looked to be 300 or 400 feet long and had windows all the way down and was just above the house. And so I've seen it 3 times, and my mother and my niece saw it when I was gone, right on top of the house.
The existence of these craft, where now you've got people coming out and seeing them, you're videotaping, and the sightings that happen around the world, including with myself, that are similar. Are these contact experiences from the same race of beings that are contacting you?
Well, I would think so, Jimmy, but I can't really answer that. You know, I've never been able to get alien out of this thing, even though they may look that way. You know, but it may be because, I don't know. I can't answer that. I just know it listens to me, and it's like friends. I mean, it's turned into a real relationship with beings that are always above this house, or if I go to California, if I'm with you, they'll be there too. They're always around us, and I don't look at it as me. I think it follows everybody. But I've formed a way of just asking it to come see a friend, like if you came.
Right.
And I always ask in the lady first. I ask if it be her will. And I was told that ahead of time to try it, and I did, and that seems to be the right combination. But they just tend to want to be. Sometimes I walk outside, and they're like kids. They act like kids at times. I'm telling you. They show off.
Now that's where. Okay, this is a great. I'm glad you brought that up. Because there's not only the religious side of this, and I understand. I've interviewed Tom DeLonge on this show, where he has brought up the religious aspect of this. He even mentioned inside of the Pentagon and the Department of Defense that this discussion of religion, maybe even a satanic bad influence, that we shouldn't be contacting what is going on up there. That there is a religious component to this. And with all of that, and bringing up DeLonge, you were approached by ATIP. Were you the first case that ATIP investigated? How did that happen?
Well, I would say I'm the first case. You know, they could have been on submarines or out in the sea. But when I reported this thing in 2007, this whole thing was in formation at that time. And I was told I was the first Bigelow Aerospace Star Team investigation. That it all happened after I reported it, and so yeah, I know they were being funded by that. So I would say through MUFON, that's how it happened.
Who approached you from ATIP?
Nobody from ATIP. That was afterwards. People that I'm saying Bigelow was working with these people through MUFON, or MUFON was working with Bigelow on this early funding Star Team investigator thing.
So it wasn't like Lou Elizondo or somebody from the organization that contacted you directly.
Well, Jim did directly, but that was later on.
Jim Semivan. Yeah, Jim Semivan. Right. Very interesting. I'm watching Twitter, and I knew that this was going to happen. I had a sighting. I don't want to pollute your answer. All right, I don't want to give a leading question, but I kind of have to here. I had a sighting with a group of people up in Washington. It was during the day, Chris, and it was massive. I'm going to guesstimate and say this object was between 400 and 500 feet tall, maybe bigger, maybe 100 feet wide, vertical, up and down, and it was shaped like a can. not necessarily like a pipe. It was shorter. It was like a can, right? Like a beer can, like a Coke can. That ratio, and it was round, and it was spinning. Just like if you held up a can of Coke in front of you by the bottom with your fingers and just spun it with your hands, right, with your fingers. That's what I saw with a group of people. With your sighting with this pipe, was it short enough to have a can shape, or was it longer and more pipe-like?
It was probably more like the can shape. It wasn't all that long as to the size. You may be more close to what we all saw. Something. It was definitely cylindrical,
right?
Like a can. Yeah.
Was it spinning at all? Was it rotating on its axis?
Didn't see any spinning motion.
Was there anything that stood out, or was it just one color? Was there anything else on the craft that you could describe?
No, other than it was a translucent bluish white color.
Okay.
And it was just stationary for a second. And right between my hands, when I raised my hands up, then I raised my head up after. And man, it was right between my hands. And that's when everybody saw it. But we've seen a lot of stuff. A lot of people have come here, and a lot of people have seen things. These orbs that I call orbs, a lot of those orbs are metallic craft in those. Some look like discs, some look like eggs, you might say. But they glow. They can glow in the day and look like a ball of light, or they can glow at night and look like an orb. Or I get photos of them every now and then. They're just in the clouds. They're always in the clouds. If you look hard enough, you can see them. Just take a lot of pictures of the clouds and start zooming in on them and look closely. They're always in the clouds.
Very, very interesting. Let's take a break right here, and when we come back, well, let's continue down the timeline. And I'm going to we're going to jump back on the timeline when we come back after the break. I want to talk about being inside of the craft, and I don't want to let that get away from me, but also other witnesses. So we're going to go backwards, and then we're going to come back to 2012 and continue the story. Our guest tonight is Chris Bledsoe. Everybody stay right there. This is Fade to Black. I am your host, Jimmy Church. What an amazing, amazing conversation on the Game Changer Network and KGRA, The Planet. Stay with us. Welcome back, Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Tonight's guest, Chris Bledsoe. Tomorrow night, Bob McGuire is here. Wednesday night, Dr. Diana Pasolka. What a great week. Thursday night, of course, is Fader Night with open lines all night long. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Our guest tonight, Chris Bledsoe. And Chris, I want to back up for a second to Cape Fear and your son, Chris Jr., and once you did the regression, you found out a couple of things. Now, Chris went out, and I want to understand for clarification here. Chris went out to go and find you. There was about 5 hours of missing time. You thought it was 5 p.m. You go back, it's 10 p.m. when you get back to the banks of the river. And you apparently were taken aboard a craft, and you were inside of a room. Did the same thing happen to your son?
He never said that it did. He pretty much felt like he was full conscious the whole time that it was going on. In fact, he did a regression with Dr. O'Connell and never discovered anything. So we all believe, including some of these scientists, that experiencing this firsthand and having memory of it was so traumatic. It would have worked on the strongest of us. Just trust me. It gets a person so sideways. You think you can experience this and not be afraid of it. Well, I beg to differ. It doesn't matter how big a man you are or think you are. When you stand before something that's not from this world, it can make you into a small little person real quick. And it just did that to him. It messed him up to where he was afraid to stay at home, sleep in the bed. I mean, he'd have nightmares. But now he's grown and got a child on the way, and bought a new house, and he's got a new business going, and he's just been very blessed from it all.
And when the reason why I bring this up, because you were trying to think about and remember the events at Cape Fear. And every time that you did that, you would get a serious migraine to the point of being unconscious and passing out, right?
Right.
Was this happening because whoever had interfaced with you during this 5 hours didn't want you to remember it? They had blocked this memory?
That's exactly what they did. I couldn't remember anything. I'm telling you, I remembered perfectly walking up or crawling up that hill and seeing these objects in the broad daylight, all three of them. I remembered plainly everything the whole time I was contemplating leaving, running, being afraid, the whole thing. But what I couldn't remember is what happened in those 4.5 hours that I was gone. I remember turning to run and then walking up to the fire, or trotting. Actually, I was trotting up the last 50 feet because I'd gotten to the cleared area and they had a small fire going. But I couldn't remember, Jimmy, nothing. And every time I tried to, when MUFON came even a year later and they started questioning me, my wife would tell you, I would just fall unconscious. If I tried to think about it, I would pass out. I had the worst headaches, and it was terrible until Dr. O'Connell came. And he did something to start with, a little regression before the main one, and he said, now your headache will go away and you'll be able to think. Sure enough, it did. I never had the headache anymore. Still couldn't remember, but till we did the regression. Then he told me, he said, this guy trained with Dr. John Mack at Harvard, and he said, if he said, I could have in your regression made it to where you would remember too much too quick, and it would cause you a lot of problems. You overloads. What we want you to do is remember everything over time, slowly and methodically. And so after that day, some weird dreams started happening, and my wife started recording me with her iPod, or screaming out loud and shouting and crying and everything in my sleep. And all the kids would see it, and they thought it was, something worth watching. They would sneak in and see me talking in my sleep. And this went on for a long time.
Would Chris Jr. Come on Fade to Black?
I would ask him. I don't know how eager he would be right now, but one day he will, I'm sure.
Yeah, at some point he doesn't have a choice.
Right.
Because and somebody just tweeted this out. This is from Corey, and Corey says, wasn't Chris Jr. in the shrubs with two beings with red eyes on the trail? Yeah. And I know I've heard references to this in the past. And that tell us about that, if you could, and describe what Chris has stated about this.
So when I left out of there, I made reference to me going down a particular part of the trail. That was the first leg out of there. Imagine looking at a lollipop just a stick and all. And the end of it, the lollipop, the candy part, is the cul-de-sac, and the stick goes straight out, right, for an eighth of a mile. And then at the end of the stick, it turns to the west an eighth. So he was at the end of the cul-de-sac, and he was looking all the way down the way out, down that covered trail. So once you got to the cul-de-sac, it opened up. But that part of the trail, the trees grew over, real close to the road and over, like a tunnel almost, like you would see in Louisiana on a plantation, the driveway going in. So that part of the trail, from where he was standing to the very end, was probably 300 yards, you might say. And when he left the fire, he went towards the woods the first time to look for me. And he was checking with the guys. They would go out and come back. When he first saw what he saw, these orbs, he called them orbs to start with, came out of the woods probably 200 yards away, down that long path. And he saw them cross over the road towards the riverside, and they were heading their way up to the guys at the campfire. So he sneaks back over to the campfire, which is to his right and down on the river. And he tells them what he sees. He saw these red orbs, and they were coming in towards these guys at the campfire. And it got one of them kind of nervous, and they were saying, "Don't be playing with us now, Junior." He said, "No, I'm looking my father." So he goes back, and I think the truck's gone by this time, and it's just Gene there. So he goes back to that end, and the shrubs, where the edge of that circle, that acre of grass, the edge is very thick with the shrubs. I mean, you get on past that end, the woods open up, and it's big hardwoods and all, but the first 10 feet around this clearing is just real thick stuff. So he sees these lights way down the path, come back out of the riverside, back out in the path, and here they come towards him. And he's seeing red balls of light the size of, he said, to look like a bowling ball size, coming towards him, side by side, these two red lights. And when they get within 20 feet of him, 15 feet, he can see plainly that these orbs were eyes, red eyes, and these beings were about the size of children, 4-year-old children. And one he said, was on his hands and knees picking up cans and sticks, interested in them, observing them, throwing them on the ground, while one of these entities was always looking at him, never took his eyes off of him, and he couldn't scream, he couldn't move, he felt paralyzed the whole time. And when I found him, those beings were still there. They undoubtedly hid when I came and got him, because when we went back to the fire, I took him back to the fire, and these guys, one of them pointed and said, "Look," and we looked up, and 3 of these things, there were 7 or 8 or 9 balls of light, or stars that just looked like stars, had just started moving everywhere, and 3 of them landed. And when we left out of there, one of those beings, according to one of the guys, was behind the truck trying to catch the truck as we were leaving out. So they were there. The craft were still up at the top of the field when we left, so they were there the whole time. And in my regression, I kept asking where my son was. I wanted to get back to my son. And the answer was that he's being protected. Not to worry about him. You'll see him soon. And that came out in the regression. So they undoubtedly were looking after him while they had me off in a ball of light.
There is, you might want to take the time to do this. There's a book called The Mojave Incident. And we have had the author on the show, and then also the husband and wife that were the couple that was in the book. Anyway, without getting into the details of this, but one of the things that they describe in their encounter was these little beings that came through the shrub that were short with red eyes. And they looked out through the grass, and there was a lot of them approaching them. Also, there was a pickup truck involved. There was another similarity, kind of strange.
A lady involved.
Yeah, you might want to go and check that out, and there's some similarities there. And if you want to make contact, I can put you in touch with them. Definitely check out. I'm listening to this and I'm thinking about the Mojave incident, and I am sure that this is going to pop up in Twitter. Now, shifting gears, and I'm looking at the clock, and I can't believe that 2 hours has gone by already so quickly. Do you anticipate, just like with Fatima, do you anticipate contact with the Vatican, or have you had direct contact with the Vatican?
Well, I can say that, remember, Dr. Pasolka is very Catholic and has connections with the Vatican. And she was allowed into the Vatican archives, and she's my study partner. Remember, I'm working with her and have been for a long time on a special project. Mm-hmm. And so she was allowed to take a couple of people with her to the Vatican, and they had a ceremony in my honor, believe it or not, where there were a bunch of papal priests, and they put my picture in the picture of the Pope's picture at the entrance of going into the Vatican archive. So it was all done, and Diana sent me some photos from there and told me that that the Pope had recommended them for me to look at, and they were of orbs and angels coming out of orbs. And they were of St. Francis of Assisi, and how he had the stigmata, and he actually ended up dying from it. But in today's lens, that would be rheumatoid, which I have come down with. So essentially, they were warning me from the Vatican, Diana was, to not let the orbs get so close that they don't realize they're harming the human body, but the plasma from these things is very hot and could cause what I have, rheumatoid arthritis, or because my hands, I lost use of my hands for the longest time. I couldn't tie my shoes. I haven't been there, but they know me through Diana and her contacts and a project that she's working on.
Would you reveal to the Vatican what the lady said to you, like the 3 children did in Fatima?
Yes. I haven't, but I will.
Okay.
If I'm asked, right?
Sure, of course. The other part that I find interesting is that, to the best of your recollection, that these orbs are appearing in 3s. The number shall be 3, right?
Yeah.
It has aside from the cigar-shaped pipe craft, have they always appeared in 3s?
Yes, usually. Not always, but 99% of the time they'll be, if I see 1, I'll see 3 that night, like all in a matter of minutes. They'll appear at 3 together or 3 in a row, but it's usually 3.
Why do you think that is, Chris?
I don't know, other than maybe it represents something of divine nature, like the Trinity, or the sides of the triangle, which represents the Trinity, or the natural creation of life, or the universal creation of life, you might say.
Have you ever seen something inside of the orb?
Yeah, I've seen faces in them. I've seen entities in them. I've seen them come out of orbs. I have a video of an entity coming out of an orb, completely out. There's one on my Facebook of an orb flying behind Lori Wagner. She's standing there. Our friend Craig Campabassa, he's a casting director. He saw the orb flash, and he threw his camera up, and this orb flew behind Lori, and their hands reaching out of it towards he and I in the camera.
Now, Craig and Lori have never told me about this.
Well, they've had it secret. There's a lot of things.
She's listening right now, Lori, and we talked earlier today about other stuff. Believe it or not, Chris, we didn't talk about you today. We talked about other stuff. But she's never told me about this. Campabasso, okay, Lori, expect that phone call tomorrow. Just be ready. No, I didn't. I did not know about this. The reason why I'm wondering, I've had other witnesses and experiencers on the show talk about orbs that seem to have something inside of it controlling it, right? Yeah. Almost like flying it.
Yeah.
Is that what you're suggesting here?
Well, absolutely.
Very interesting.
Yeah, they're either they can either machines can come out of these things. I've seen them turn into a craft, from a tiny orb to a big craft, to a Volkswagen size to a house size. They can grow that big that quick, or it can just appear as a ball of light and only be just a blink. It come on in front of you, get big as a beach ball, and go off. And they can do all kinds of things. But I have a video I'll send you of a being coming out of an orb, and it's been looked at by some of the best, and nobody has been able to debunk it.
Okay, you've got three videos now that you're sending me. I hope you're taking notes. The number shall be 3. The number shall be 3. Okay, now staying on this, I had, again, I don't want to ask a leading question, but I feel that I need to. I had a caller, a witness on the show, describe a ball. I had two completely different situations about a year apart that were oddly similar. I'm going to leave the one with the police officer off to the side, and he's probably listening right now. I'm going to go to the other one where this witness said he came out of his house, and there was coming up his street, and he described it about 6 to 10 feet round, clear, illuminated sphere going up his street, and in the middle of the sphere was a little alien guy, like sitting in his seat, holding onto controls. And there were sparks coming, and it was like rolling like a bike tire, but it's a ball. And this being was in the inside of it, went up the street, took a turn, went into an empty lot where they were building a house. The neighbors and him ran down the street and looked, and this sphere rolled into a craft. There was a craft waiting for this other sphere. Now, when I describe something like that to you, is this similar to what you have been seeing in North Carolina?
Pretty much, yeah. I've never seen one roll down the street and roll into another one, but I have seen many orbs that appear. Well, for example, Lori Wagner and her daughter, Gabby, a few years ago, I was in Encinitas visiting. Actually, we were going to see Tom Danhauser, And Lori picked me up from the airport, myself and another guy, and we went out on the beach, and I just got this little message on the way to the beach at Encinitas to tell Gabby, her daughter, that she was going to have an experience tonight. I just heard it. You're going to have an experience tonight, Gabby. And I told her in front of everybody. And no longer than 5 minutes after we stopped and looked out, this orange orb appears. And then another orange orb appears. And they look really big, way offshore on the Pacific. And they kept appearing here and there. They'd go out and come on in a different place. And we watched it for a good 45 minutes. And it's been a long day flying. We're just going to get in the hotel. And so we decided that was a good show. It was truly an unknown. It was just big orange orbs. And when we turned our back to the sea and started towards the car, they came very slowly off the ocean, went right over our heads, and they went together as one. Now, I had a pair of night vision goggles. They were Lori's, and I happened to just get to see them in their grand view through that thing. And they were just above our heads. I mean, not very high at all. But they looked like a water drop, almost translucent, but big, like really big. I don't know how big I would say. They were probably 30 or 40 feet if you were standing beside them each. And they looked like a translucent drop of water and kind of moved that way. They moved like a glob of water would, kind of wiggly or jiggly. And right when they got over top of us, a couple of 100 feet over our head, they were glowing this pale white, not orange anymore. They went together, like one water drop to another would just come together. They did that. And then it shot off like out of a cannon towards San Diego, just right in front of us, right over our head. And it was classic. But that was the only time I've seen one really join another, and it did it really close, just over our head.
We're going to take a break, Chris, and we're going to head into overtime. And when we come back, there is always the question of evidence. Right, yeah, okay, videos and pictures and eyewitness testimony, but there's always, did you get an alien T-shirt? Did you grab a pen when you were inside of the craft? Did you come back with some evidence? And you were given something. And when we come back, we're going to talk about this, but and we're going to save what it was till after the break. But this object, again, don't give it away, Chris. Let's talk about it when you come back. Okay. But when this was given to you, were you hoping that you would be able to show this to somebody at a later date?
I actually didn't remember it for the first night after having such an experience that followed, right?
Right.
That blew my mind so that I didn't check where I put the thing that night.
Okay, let's stop right there. Let's just stop because this is absolutely amazing. Okay. And it's a nice tease. We call that a tease in radio, Chris. So let's tease everybody, and we'll tell you all about what this was and is when we come back after the break. Our guest tonight is Chris Bledsoe. What a great conversation, Chris, and thank you so much for taking the time. And we will be doing overtime when we come back. This is Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church, on the Game Changer Network and KGRA, The Planet. You should see what's going on Twitter. Follow me on Twitter at JChurchRadio, and then go to hashtag F2B. It's been a fun night. We'll be right back. Stay with us. What a great conversation tonight. I know all of you have been enjoying this. Our guest tonight is Chris Bledsoe. Tomorrow night, Bob McGuire is here. Wednesday night, Dr. Diana Pasolka. You guys have been waiting for this. It's going to go down on Wednesday night, and then Thursday night is Fader night with open lines all night long. Our guest tonight, of course, is Chris Bledsoe. It's a continuation of our conversation from last week. And not only did we leave a lot on the table last week, but I had so many questions that I needed to get out, and I just thought about things all week. And one of the things that I don't do here, Chris, is I don't have a list of questions. I don't do that. It's just you and I having a conversation. But there was things that when we got done last week, I was like, oh, duh. And one of the things that we didn't get to last week, which I want to discuss now, is you were given something, and your description of it, which you're going to do here in a second, left me floored. I tried to picture this in my mind's eye. And you describe it, quite well, but it is difficult. And certainly, if it's an alien object, we wouldn't have any way to relate to it. What were you given?
I was given this object that the best way I can describe it, if you buy from the grocery store a 5-pound pack of hamburger that's in a tube, not in a box with styrofoam or with cellophane over it, but a tube of hamburger or a sausage, a pack of sausage. It was shaped like a pill shape, but big as a small, like a dog. In fact, it felt to me like it was it was dark when they handed it to me. It felt like it had fur. Felt like I was feeling bones and ribs of something alive, but I couldn't see a head or tail, and it frightened me, so I dropped it. And I picked it back up, and immediately I tried to not let it get away. I didn't know, because they told me, they said, this is yours, you must keep. You got to keep this. So I opened this kennel door, and I set it in the door. And when I closed the door is when this blast of wind came, and then this beautiful lady came from out of this cow or bull is the only way I can describe it. A bull came out of there, out of the wind, out of a hole, ran me over, and when I hit on my back and I turned to my stomach, there's this lady. And I never thought any more about what it was they gave me. I didn't think about it that night. I was just so blown away, and everything that just had happened and what she had told me, that I was not thinking about this object. So I go back the next day looking for it, and it's not there. And I never did figure out for the longest time what it was that it was they gave me. But she told me when the time was right that they would give me the information I needed to move forward, and they would help me. And they have been. In fact, all of these videos and photos came after she came. The ability to help others came after she came. The ability to show others, share this with others, came only after she came. Nothing before. For 5 years, nothing. No pictures, hardly, without it damaging my camera. But one thing I got from her, that this object represented the direction of man, that we were living with no direction, no forward or no backwards, no way. And that's the only thing I can figure that I'm satisfied with what it meant. I never saw it again after that first night. Some friends of mine said, oh yeah, it was probably a device that opened a portal that caused the lady to come out, And I've heard that mentioned, but I don't know. I just know it came. She came, and it changed my life.
Were you conscious? Was this a conscious event?
Yes.
You weren't dreaming?
No, I was conscious. I got out of bed at 3 o'clock in the morning and was led out in the darkness to to the dog kennel, exactly where Chris Jr. and I was standing when Rosie was barking in the bushes that night, where the little being was behind the dog kennel. Exactly where Lori was standing in that photo when Craig took it of the entity and the orb with the hands coming out. All in that area, things tend to happen a lot.
The description of the bull, right, appearing in front of you from the wind, running over you, right, knocking you down. You look up, and this woman came from or transitioned from the cow into this being. Almost sounds dreamlike, and I know you understand what I'm suggesting here,
right?
Because it's an amazing visual. But it almost feels dreamlike. And then you were given this object. When you felt, the reason why I'm asking if you were conscious, you felt the fur, but also you described it as like thorns, or prickly, right?
Yeah, the fur was kind of prickly on it, and of course, I didn't know what I had in my hand, and it dark, and me in the woods, and this thing was given to me, and it really scared me to start with. And feeling of it, it felt prickly. So I immediately, but it felt like it had ribs, like a dog, like if you were holding a little chihuahua or something.
Right.
That's what it felt like, a living being.
And that's the part that suggests to me that you were conscious. Right, that this was a real event because you physically felt this object in your hands.
Yeah, I physically felt it, saw it, and I walked in the back door that morning after that happened.
I have a couple of questions here in Twitter that I want to get to before we end tonight, and one of them is this. I can't read the name from Zorfex. I don't know. Is there anything that seems to make the activity more intense or more often?
Yes, it always does. I find that talking about it, let's say if you come here and we wanted to see something, I can't guarantee anybody will see anything. But usually if we're all of the same mind, we're all open and not criticizing or not, skeptic. Because if you are, you won't see anything. It just don't work that way. But if we all get of the same like and the same mind and we start talking about it and get excited, it tends to get excited too. And what I mean by that is Dr. McGuire will describe it in his, if he talks about his experience, and this has happened with others, not only does an orb appear in the sky and visually appear and fly away and disappear, and that happened more than once, but it starts getting electric, like in the air. The orbs appear in the trees and start flitting off, little orbs the size of a firefly. They might start shooting through the tops of the trees or going down my pond and leaving sparks as they go, little small orbs. And it's like the air gets electrified. I haven't felt it. I told Bob, I'm feeling something right now, and he begins to describe this. I'll let him tell about it. But it's not just one orb or one thing. It can really cause this whole phenomenon to get so excited that orbs start appearing in the trees, up in the air. Some fly right by us. Ryan's little Jenny, first time she had an experience, she and Ryan walk out to the car, and this orb appears ground level or chest level, real excited, and sees her, and it comes and flies right by her face and goes by her, scares her to death. But visible stuff, not something you take with a camera and you see it later. Of course, we get that too, but we get these visible orbs of light that can be anything from a firefly to a Volkswagen to a full-blown something with metal inside.
You've described Diana Pasulka as your study partner, but you're also working on a project. Can you describe that project for us? What is it?
I can't say. That's super top secret right now. And it's been a 7-year deal.
Right.
And I've been forbidden to say, so I have to leave that for now.
Forbidden?
Yeah, for now. It's important that I don't say anything about that right now.
She's not that intimidating, Chris.
Oh, yeah. Well, I think it's our mutual friends that's doing the forbidding for now.
Oh, man. Well, she'll be here Wednesday. We'll see what I can do about that. The information that you've been given by the lady and the stuff about the future, at some point, are you going to go completely public about it? And the reason why I ask is that if any of this comes to pass and you speak about it after the fact, it doesn't mean anything, right? We need it before these events happen to know that this was real, and for you and for the rest of the world. Right. Do you anticipate going completely public before this stuff comes to pass?
I suppose I may. I just don't like to. Well, yeah, I probably will. I don't want to say any more to give any hint to which way it goes. Is it positive or negative? But some of it is negative or can be taken that way. But remember, none of it has to happen. It all ends in a good, shiny, peaceful era. Is all I can say. And the women are going to rise up and start running more of this world, and I think peace will start coming.
Well, we men ask for it, so
yeah,
that's all our fault, no doubt about that. And what about the way that you have started to deal with debunkers and critics? Because they can be very harsh. There's a lot of trolls out there, too, as well, that do their goal is to get under your skin. How have you learned to deal with that?
Well, basically, after going quiet and being pulled into some very, let's just say I've had the chance to, or the honor, I would say it's an honor. I've had the honor of studying with people that the UFO world has no clue exists, and becoming friends with people from these agencies, from the government, that have been very nice to my family and helped us more than, it's been the trolls and the people that are the problem. It's not been the government. And in fact, when it first happened, when MUFON left, everybody was saying, oh my God, the government will kill you. The men in black they're going to get you. So here we left with the worry that the government, and I didn't know anything, I just saw lights in the sky, but I can't talk about it because the government might come send the men in black. I heard every flipping thing you can think of until these scientists come along and said, hey, leave the UFO world alone, study with us. You got the chance to learn and to be pulled into some circles. And that's what I did. I got involved with people that I have a lot of respect for, that the UFO world only wishes they knew. And I know things. This metal that's going around that Diana talks about in her book is very real. Just believe me on that. It's 100% real. She's done what she says she's done. She's handled it. I've handled it. I'm I know the truth, and I've been with people that know it's real. Let's just say that. I can't say a whole lot more, but having that knowledge, I have no time for those people. They're just being ignorant. And in fact, a NASA friend of mine told me a long time ago, he said, Chris, some people don't have the mental capacity after all the years of brainwashing us all into saying, laughing at you. But if you said, I saw a ghost, well, it used to be everybody would laugh at you, right? Mm-hmm. Or I saw a UFO, you got laughed at. Now they're not laughing so much. But there are a few people still out there that think they're smart and have their agendas, but they're just uninformed. They're totally uninformed. I can tell you, way uninformed.
I want to go back to the craft really quick. We have never discussed this. During your regression and your recall of being on this craft, you were assuming that you were on the craft. I've got a list of questions really quick. Did it feel like it was moving? No, only from looking through the walls. The walls would at times be clear, and you could see through them like they wasn't even there. But no movement. I felt no movement at all. Were you flying? Were you above the ground? Could you look down on? Yeah. Yes. And for that 4.5 hours seemed like 4 years, actually, or months. The time there was a lot different than here. And, what I saw, they took me up high and I could see things. The whole thing, basically, I've told this before, was not nasty or physical or dirty, no anal probes, no doctoring, no scoop marks, no tearing off flesh, nothing like that. It was, they brought me back without Crohn's disease. And the whole time I was gone, I was looking down at Earth from above. I saw Egypt, and I saw the pyramids and the Sphinx facing to the east. And this was one thing that was really weird, because they told me, this happened right away. They told me of significance of the Sphinx and the pyramids and this red star Regulus being in the constellation of Leo. They said that Leo and the Sphinx represented, in other words, the body of the Sphinx represented the constellation of Leo. The head actually represented the return of knowledge to the people. And they told me when the red star Regulus lines up on the horizon facing the Sphinx before daylight, when that red star just breaks the top of the ground before sunlight, that's when the shift would change. So this is some of the stuff I got in my first visit. And I told that to some people that ran it through astrology, astrological things, a machine, I guess, and it came out to be an actual date of September 23rd of 2026 when that would happen. So that was my whole experience, looking down from above, flying inside a craft with 3 of these very tall beings that looked very shadowy looking. You said September 23rd. Of 2026. Didn't you also, you were told about the earthquake in Baja, Mexico? Sure did, and it was the same date of that year. It was the same date. I never made the connection till right now. I didn't either until you just said it, but Diana heard that. She was there, and they recorded it that day. I told of an earthquake in Baja, California, a 7.8 magnitude on September the 23rd. And that year that the election would be disrupted because of a weather phenomenon. And sure enough, Hurricane Sandy flooded New York during the election time in November, remember? Same year. Now, the mention of the Baja earthquake being on September 23rd, and I am going to defer to my experts out here on Fade to Black, the Fadernauts. Let's check out 2026, September 23rd, 2026, and see where Regulus is on that date. That's going to be very interesting. Going back to this, though, you made this mention live in public, which was videotaped, in May, and then May, June, July, August, September, 5 months later, 4 months later, this 7.8 earthquake that you mentioned in May actually happened on that day, didn't it?
It sure did.
Where is this video? Can we watch it? Is it out there online? What was the name of the event?
It was MUFON, North Carolina, and it was in Asheville, May of 2012, I think.
May of 2012, Asheville. Yeah. Okay.
Asheville, North Carolina. I hadn't done a speech since, the show until then. And I wouldn't have done it then hadn't the lady come. But she said, tell your story. You know why I'm here. You got to tell your story. Tell what you know. And I'll help you. And sure enough, 2 weeks later, I was in Nashville. And there is Dr. Pasulka. And I keep saying that because it's ended up with she and I studying together and may end up doing a pretty big project together. And it's all about this, all about telling the truth.
What are going to be the effects of the religious side of this? And I mean it like this, because in the past, the warning signs were always laid out. If the UFO phenomenon and these questions are revealed, then the world collapses, religions collapse, Wall Street collapsed today, so we can take that one off the list, right? But that the Vatican and religions around the world will not be able to handle this, and those followers of those religions are going to go nuts. If everything that we are suggesting here over the last week, Chris, does play itself out, what will happen? I mean, how is the Vatican, how is Islam, right? How is everything, even India and Hinduism, how are they going to be able to handle this?
Well, I think they'll do like I did for the first while. It totally blew my faith of what I was taught clean out the window. It took me 5 years, until the lady came, to know, because I questioned myself, are they angels or are they demons like everybody's telling me? Well, I was praying to God. I didn't know demons come when you prayed, so I ruled that out. I was healed from Crohn's, so everything kept tipping in what I was thinking in my heart, who they were, what I thought they were. And then when the lady came, I knew it was time to share the story. Now, I still can't tell you as Archangel Gabriel from this place. I can't tell you that. I can just tell you that it's all in the Bible. They perceived it as angels. It acts that way when it interacts with me. It acts in that manner, and I've seen miracles happen with people. Seen people made better by them, and recently as well. I mean, very recently, and so I think that the church will come around, and it'll be time to get off our know-it-all. You know, the church seems to think they know everything, but they don't. We all tend to think we know it all, but we don't. It's time we all put together and learn. And I think the answers will come. But it's the apocalypse. That word is not the end of the world. That word means, in Greek word, means to reveal the truth or to tell a secret. So I think the secret's being told. It's here now.
I'm going to leave you on this last question. Was Jesus an alien?
Well, I wouldn't say he's an alien. I don't like that word. Alien is a bad word.
Was he an extraterrestrial?
That would be a good thought. He was somebody that came here that left a big mark on society and told us how we should live. You know, he said something that always got to me, and he said, if you had the faith of a mustard seed, you could make a mountain move. So what did he just say?
Right.
Is that we're in an illusion? We must be. And seeing all these dogs and animals and people in these balls of light, I began to wonder, is the real world around us and we're just in a matrix of somehow, a temporary illusion? I don't know, Jimmy. There's a lot to learn here. And I look to the experts. I just want to share with the experts how it affects me, how it interacts, and let them help us figure it all out. That's where we need to be now. The government to get involved.
Thank you so much, Chris. What an amazing... You have a good time? What a great conversation.
I enjoyed it.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've got 3 videos to send me. And then tomorrow we're going to talk, and I'm going to get the big reveal. Okay?
Okay. You got one already on your cell phone. I just texted it to you. So.
Oh, did you really?
Yeah.
Hold on for a second. Hold on. Let me see. I don't see it yet.
Should be on your text.
I'm on my text. You just sent it to the NSA. You sent it to the wrong organization.
I got Jimmy Church here.
Oh, there it is. No, it just popped in. I got it. Thank you so much, Chris. I'll check it out here in a few minutes. Enjoy the rest of your night. Give my best to the family, and we'll be speaking first thing tomorrow. Thank you so much.
Thanks, brother.
Chris Bledsoe. Now, you can go head over to Facebook. We've got Chris's links over at jimmychurchradio.com, and you can go and follow and interact with Chris right there on Facebook. It's simple enough to do. I got a lot of requests tonight from you out there wondering how to get a hold of Chris, and you can do that right there on Facebook. The links are over at jimmychurchradio.com. I want to remind everybody once again what is going on this week. Tomorrow night, we have Bob McGuire here, and then Wednesday night, Dr. Diana Pasolka. So we've got a very big, busy week on Fade to Black, and of course, Thursday night, we're going to wrap up with Fader Night. And from this night forward, we are now going to be broadcasting live on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. And we are doing that for all of you, okay? And it is just something that we needed to do. The technical side of this, of pulling that off, was very, very difficult. But we are now heading out on 10 different live streams and syndication throughout the world. With that, I'm going to get out of here. I want to thank our guest tonight, Chris Bledsoe. I am your host, Jimmy Church. Fade to Black's executive producer is Rita Camurian. Show is produced by Hilton J. Palm, Renee, Dennis, and Bob. Announcers are Steve Harder, Gene Vitoa, Mark D. Kovar. Webmaster is Drew the Geek. Music, Doug Aldrich. Intro, Spaceboy. SpaceboyMusic.com. Fade to Black is produced by KJ Shower for the Game Changer Network, and syndication is KGRA, The Planet. This broadcast owned and copyrighted 2020 by Fade to Black and the Game Changer Network. It cannot be rebroadcast, downloaded, copied, or used anywhere in the known universe without written permission from Fade to Black or the Game Changer Network. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. We'll see everybody tomorrow night. Bob McGuire right here. Until then, be safe. Go back, Lee Tappy.